So, welcome everyone to Carving a New Path. My name is Andrea Hyland. I'm the host of this show. And just as a brief introduction, this podcast began in 2020 in response to all the change that people were experiencing. And so the conversations that I have and the guests who appear have all listened to their inner voice and birthed new ways of being in the world. And I hope that it gives you, let's just say, some food for thought about your own life. Is there a new path you have carved? Is there a new path that you want to carve? So today, the conversation I'm going to continue is with Marie Ek Lipanovska. Hello, Marie.
Hello, hello.
So Marie had this idea. She listened to her inner voice, and she had this idea for a 12-part series called Unfolding the Gift from God. And so today we're going to talk, well, so far we've talked about life, writing, meditation, children, which I just want to highlight that all of us began as children, as a child. You are the gift. And today we're going to shift to a topic called illustrations. And before we dive into that conversation, I want to just give you a little piece about Marie. She helps women become a good mother to themselves and to develop a deep and personal relationship to God. She does this through meditation, writing, and art. She is a writer, illustrator, artist, and meditation teacher, and also the founder of Heal My Voice Sweden and a publisher of 13 books. So welcome, Marie.
Thank you. Nice to be here again.
Yeah. Well, as we began our conversation, our pre-conversation this morning, we didn't even talk about how you wanted to start the conversation. We talked about you going to the beach later today. We talked about the book that I'm writing. And so where would you like to begin today with illustrations?
I think I want to begin where we talked about children in the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
And every time we have had a conversation, the conversation continues within me.
Yeah. For
About
me
children.
too. I'm so glad you said that. That's so true. Yes.
So a lot of new questions arise and answers and insights. And so I hope that also that is how it also lands in the viewer, the listener. So hopefully, because that's part of having a conversation, not having a lecture.
Right. Yeah.
Unfolding the answers and keep on questioning things. So yeah, illustrations. One thing that I found after our conversation was actually a lot of new. When I was looking for an image to the last program, I wanted a photo of me as a child, and I was looking for a specific photo because that photo is the foundation of how Sötnosen, my illustration, came alive, but I couldn't find it. So I even went and picked up my extra, what do you call it, hard drive that I have, and looked through all the images and photos, and I couldn't find it. But what I found was actually a lot of illustrations that I had forgotten about. And I was reminded that, yes, I have published 13 books, but I have a lot of books that I have compiled that I haven't published. And those I found. So it's interesting, just looking for one photo, I was reminded of other books that are made of illustrations, my earliest illustrations back in 2016, 2017. And maybe there will be some more published books after this conversation. And instead, I found a photo of me that I was talking about that I found at my mother's place that were about to fall off the frame because the tape on the back side was so dry. So just, it's so interesting how everything is weaved together and how one conversation leads both back to something, to an old story, and forward to an upcoming story. So, and looking through all the old photos, I also found an old photo of an illustration that I made when I was young. And I was reminded that I liked to, I had an image and then I tried to copy that the best I could. So I have been drawing for fun since I was a child. But it became a gift in 2000 and I think it's 2007. And that situation that happened also became what carved a new path. So I'm just trying to, weave it all together. At that point, my oldest daughter was around 15 years old. And I don't know the background. I don't remember the background, but I wrote about this story in one of the Heal My Voice books. I don't remember which one actually, but she got so mad. She was so angry and she said some terrible things to me. And she just continued. It was like darkness moving, towards me. And she actually ended it all with saying, "I hope you die."
Yeah.
And
Those moments happen.
yeah, and that was like, whoa. And in that moment, as a response to that, ooh, those words, I just slapped her in her face. It was like a reflex. It just came. Almost like, now you crossed a border, a boundary. That was just too much for me to handle. But what it led to was me leaving the house. It was in October or November. It was cold. I forgot to take the jacket. I just left the house in despair and took the car and started, driving around. And I phoned a friend, spoke, for a while with her, but didn't feel that it helped me. So I drove down to the ocean and I just sat there on the rocks, cold, windy, and I cried and I cried and I cried. And then I called for God. Please help me. I don't know what's wrong and I don't know how to fix the problem, but something is wrong. And that situation with my daughter shows that something is deeply wrong in our family. And I don't know, 20, 30 minutes later, I was just walking back and forth beside the ocean. I saw this image, inside of my head. And I realized this is the problem. God is showing me an image of what's wrong. And I cried even more because it was a painful image to see. And it was like an air balloon. In that air balloon, I was together with two of my children inside the, I don't know what you call that, where you stand.
Yeah, the hot air balloon you're talking
Yeah.
about? Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and outside of that, my oldest daughter was hanging. And I could feel how she was outside of the family, outside, like a heavy burden. And it was just a matter of time before she was going to let go. So I saw that there was something, and my husband was not even in the image.
Mm-hmm.
So from that moment, I started to have a new kind of connection and a new kind of language that I and God was still, that we are still speaking today with images, with metaphors. And it took another 30 minutes before he showed me a new photo or a new image of the solution, how to try to get her into her own, air balloon, and keep the connection with some kind of line. So if she, got away too much, I could pull her in. But she needed her own space. And we needed our space. And from that moment, I started to communicate with the family in images. I went home. I took paper and pen, and I made that first image of the air balloon and showed it to her.
Mm-hmm.
This is the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it was almost like I was through the illustrations, I was given a new gift of communication in the family, between me and God, and also, in relationship to other people. So that's how it started.
Yeah, there's so many things that I just kind of wrote down as you were talking. One is the power of drawing to kind of bypass the mind and emotions and bring forth something that's a little more neutral for to as a communication tool. Another thing is how breakdowns are the beginning of breakthroughs. And even with drawing, how I know that you've had this practice where you will sit and draw without knowing what's going to emerge. It's not like, oh, I'm going to sit down and draw this specific thing. It's about allowing, I'll say, God to come through the pencil, the pen, through your body to bring forth something that you weren't even aware of, and that can even be in an image before you even put paper to pen or pen to paper or any kind of writing implement. So I can really feel the power of that and the power of it as a gift, yes, and as a tool of healing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, like you said, it bypasses your mind. it's, I really believe images are a language.
Mhm.
So when I use images, like in my characters, like Sötnosen, for example, I can add words. But if I add words, then the words will be in Swedish, for example. And
Mhm.
you won't understand the words,
Right.
but the image you understand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a universal language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what I really love. So it's more open.
Mm-hmm.
You will see things in an image that maybe I didn't think of.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
But with your history, you will look at the image, from that space.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a, images has a space. It's almost like it allows more. It has room for the unseen world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Words always limits.
Mm-hmm.
Images doesn't.
Yeah. You know, this is so interesting that it's funny that the thing that pops up for me is actually tarot cards because it was almost 40 years ago that I took a class with someone who taught me the meaning of each of the cards in the Rider-Waite deck of tarot cards. And then she told me uh, to look at them and see what I saw in them. So she told me like a basic meaning of each of them, or what does a wand mean? What does a cup mean? What does a sword mean? And so I have found over the years that whenever I read tarot cards for someone, I ask them to, number one, do not tell me your question. I ask them to hold a question in their mind as they shuffle the deck. Then, as I lay out the cards, I look at what image is meaningful to me in this moment. What patterns do I see that are there? And I just start to speak about it from there. And then that allows the person also to interpret that for themselves. What am I seeing? How does that relate with that image? So even as you're talking about how the you could create something and then I see something different in it, that it's so true with an illustration, with a painting, with tarot cards, or however else we create. Um, Yeah, I'm even thinking about it with nature because sometimes what I've done is walk around and then see a symbol that pops out for me, and then I draw the symbol. And just to tell the listeners, I am a stick figure drawer. Like, I draw with stick figures. I draw for the pleasure of what it is to hold colored pencil or crayon or oil pastel crayon in my hand, see what the colors are that come to me. And so it's always interesting. Just recently, I actually came across some doodles that I did back in 2011 when the first Heal My Voice book came out, because it was just something Karen Channing had just been teaching some courses on doodling, and I brought it into the group as a way to bypass the mind and see what story wanted to be written, see what doodles they wanted to. And it was interesting to just look at some of the doodles and then interpret them differently today than what my original thought was about them. Yeah, I forget where I started with that, but that's kind of the download of and I guess the other thing that came up for me as you were originally when you first started talking was how we go through cycles with things, and how it might be a writer has a diary when they're a little diary with a key, when they're 8 years old and they do some writing, but they don't really pursue it until later in life. It comes back in a different way, or it comes cycle after cycle in a different way. Same thing with how you liked to draw as a child, that you have some that you had the images of you drawing as a child, and then here at a time when you needed them during a time with your daughter. It's like there they were again. The images were there. You don't lose it. It's not like, yeah, the gift is there for when you need it, when you want it, when it calls to you.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting is I see them as gifts. Just like you said, when I was a child, I liked to draw, and
Mhm.
I like to do things with clay and stuff. So I have always been creative. But I can also see that, first of all, I haven't attended any classes.
Mhm.
No, I have no education. Except from, when you went to school, when you were a little girl. So, and that is, it's the same thing with writing, meditation. Everything that I do is self-taught.
Mhm.
I have been practicing a lot. And that's why there also is some kind of development. But today I can recognize that all these are gifts from God. God planted something in me when I was a child that I didn't know of. So in school, yeah, we were writing and doing maths and everything. And we were drawing and we had music. But when I have given back those gifts to God, something has happened.
Mhm.
So when I took my writing that used to be as a journalist and gave my writing to God, I wrote my first book, Time to Listen, in Swedish,
Mhm.
about Jesus. So whenever I hand over that gift back to the giver, something happens. When I gave the meditation to God, something happened. When I gave the illustration to God, something happens. So suddenly it has, yeah, it becomes something more. It's no longer about me. The focus changes from me to Jesus, my blogging or my as a journalist to Jesus, or my inner child and my longing to communicate with my children becomes Sötnosen. And suddenly this year, Madame Mulala entered, like
Mhm. Mhm.
there was a new character
Mhm.
who is, the image of it's the woman in Christ.
Mhm.
And she didn't look like that in the beginning. Looking back, she came at the same time that Sötnosen was born, actually. In the late 2016, I started to draw a lot. And there was a child and there was the woman. And there was a teenager, in between them. So it has developed. And I found some of those earliest books and illustrations after our last conversation.
Mhm.
Uh, one of them is called The Resurrection. And it's the resurrection of the woman in Christ. So it's like she comes out as Madame Oulala to the world.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting that whenever I give back the gift to the giver, something happens. It becomes something more, and it becomes a gift to others.
Yeah.
And that's just, yeah. So I never know when I keep unfolding the gift that life is, and that desire that I have to love and be loved, who fuels everything in me, love me, God. I
Mhm.
always keep saying, love me.
Right.
I'm still hungry. Feed me. I'm still thirsty, give
Mhm.
me more water. So I continue to feel that desire. And that's what I never know what will come next. What
Mhm.
is the next gift?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mhm.
Because I don't know what he planted in me from the beginning. I don't know. You never know.
Yeah. It's the thing that there was something that was just like going through me around what is our motivation to do things and the creative impulse that we have, that when there's something about this getting lined up about what is really the motivation or the calling to do something. And I'll just circle back what spurred that. It was that uh, you had the inspiration to do this series. And then in the last recording that we did around children, you were looking for, so it was like you're giving from your heart. We're showing up, we're having these conversations. There's no for me, I don't think there is for you either. There's no like agenda around it, like, oh, this will lead people to buy my program or buy my art. Or, I mean, that's always a nice benefit that can come from being more visible. But there's just something about wanting to ask questions and to share. And for that, you and I have been drawn to Blog Talk Radio years ago, and now to the podcast format of having these conversations. So I really feel like when we come here, we're coming pure of heart, that there's an idea and we want to see what unfolds, and there's a listening and a back and forth conversation that comes out of this inspiration. And so after the last conversation, here you are looking for a photograph for us so that I can put it out, so we can each put this out into the world. You're looking for a photograph. And then this unexpected gift happens where in the looking, you find some other things. And it's like, oh, here's something, here's illustrations, here's writing, here's ideas. Oh, this has all of a sudden come up for you. to it's like that tomato that suddenly grows on the plant in a place where you didn't even know there was a plant. And then you take it and you enjoy the fruits and maybe share with someone a tomato sandwich. It's like that's how it felt like when you were talking about looking for the photograph, and then here you found this treasure chest of things from the past that you had written, that you had created. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, I can have it as a memory of something I created, or you brought it into the conversation, and maybe it's unfolding to come and be shared in another way. These are these cycles of paying attention, of listening, of coming to conversations pure of heart, that it is a mystery that we don't know what will appear for us to play with, to experience, to share, to give, to receive. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like you said, I don't have an agenda. What do you call it? Agenda.
Yeah, agenda.
I don't have it anymore. And I don't want that anymore. Because just staying open and receiving, and instead focusing on being present with whatever is present at the moment, that is the unfolding. And unfolding the gift from God, that's the title of my story in Sensual Voices.
Yes.
Program that we did together. So there was a seed. I didn't know that it would end like a whole series, many years later. And the same thing, it's like when God gave me that gift as images as a way of communicating, that was years before I entered church and opened the Bible. I didn't know that Jesus were talking in metaphors.
Yeah.
So, but I see, so I already understand this language because I have it with me. So and looking back to all the years in Heal My Voice and Heal My Voice Sweden, I was the co-author in Empowered Voices. That was in 2011 and published in 2012. And I stayed in that energy together with you until 2017 in Innovative Voices.
Yeah.
And I think I actually, in that last book, I think there are some illustrations.
Yes.
So, and I think I write something about Sötnosen or the inner child or something. So it's interesting how it's like it's yeah. And during all those years, I learned to listen to women, their stories, real stories. And when I entered church and opened the Bible, the same listening, I just brought it into the stories in the Bible. It's the same thing. It's real people, Abraham and Sarah, Noah and Mary and Joseph. It's all stories about people that has lived, real stories. So I just moved that listening into that space, and together with the gift of illustrations, it's like I can enter those worlds. I can step into their lives.
Yeah.
I can be a witness. I can be a detective. Like, what did you say? So, and that developed into me in 2017 very courageous, I have to say. I
Mhm.
decided to do a YouTube series called 1 Year with God in Swedish.
Mhm.
And every day I opened the Bible, for a plan that I had, and I just stepped into the world and then just shared whatever I had on my mind, in my heart.
Mhm. Mhm.
It was 7 years ago since I started that. And this week, after our last conversation, I stepped back into that energy, went
Mhm.
back to 1 year with God, and I'm, receiving, myself.
Mhm. Mhm.
So when Madame Oulala ended up, I didn't ask for that, on
Uh-huh.
cover of On Purpose Woman magazine, she just like pulled the whole energy
Mhm.
to the surface.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting, how they are, yeah, it all comes together now. That's how I feel.
Yeah. Well, and Marie is talking about how her illustration of Madame Oulala is on the current issue of On Purpose Woman magazine online, and I'll put the link into the show page here. So yeah, you can look for it there and look for, if you listen to this later, like in the future, it's the July August issue of On Purpose Woman magazine. So yeah, so congratulations on that. And I love how there are other paintings and illustrations that are highlighted in an article about you too. Yeah, beautiful.
So I have noticed that I had Sötnosen for a year as an illustration in On Purpose Woman magazine.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
felt like, oh, she needs to come home
Mhm.
because there's something going on with her. She's changing. Her face is changing. So I need to bring her home.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's when I asked Ginny, the founder of On Purpose Women Global Community and the magazine, I have another character if you are interested.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then she ended up on the cover. So that timing of
Mhm. Mhm.
knowing when to bring something back, but not just leaving that space empty that I have developed, but this is what I have. Are you interested?
Mhm. Yeah.
So what I see and one of the things that I love with my illustrations is it's a little bit hard to say this, but there are some kind of, they're, what do you call it, prophetic, they show me what's coming.
Yes. Yes.
So sometimes when I draw Sötnosen, she's a couple of days ahead.
Mhm.
So I understand them a couple of days later.
Yeah.
And that it has been like that since the beginning.
Mhm.
In my earliest illustrations of her, together with the woman, it is Sötnosen who has paved the way for the woman in the illustrations.
Yeah.
So it's like she has this gift of, yeah, the prophecy. She knows where she's going. It's that kind of, I don't know, she represents some kind of purity of heart.
Mhm.
And that is not my heart, my human heart. That's also a gift. That's the heart that I have been given from Jesus. That's how I feel. So,
Yeah.
so one gift leads to a lot of other gifts if I just stay with them and unfold and don't get too attached.
Right. Yeah.
For example, allowing Sötnosen to change, to get a more human face, even
Mhm.
though I felt inside myself, but now she's
Mhm.
changed. And actually, others told me, oh, I liked her better the old way. It's like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
move through. This is the unfolding of
Mm.
her as a gift.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe it's not about being liked.
Mm-hmm.
It is about allowing it to happen. So,
Yeah, and it's the letting go of ego, and I feel like it is connected with all kinds of expressions of art. Is, as you were talking about the prophetic messages, I was also thinking about how interesting it was to do the Heal My Voice guidebooks around the stories and to go back and reread stories that had been written several years earlier, and then to see what was happening in the woman's life who wrote the story. And when I read the story, I was like, you're the message is here. Like
yeah.
the thing that you're actually evolving in your life, and you're looking for a tool, go back and read your story. It's right there in between the lines and the practices and everything else. And I feel like what you're describing is when you are creating, when you are illustrating, and you are in that egoless place. I'm going to call it that the ego is set aside. The attachment you let go of. What is this going to look like? What is this going to be? That then it's like the message can come through. And days later, you will understand or years later, you will understand that. The other thing that is really coming up for me, Marie, is that and I feel like we've talked about this before. When we're beginning a journey of healing and we go back into reaching into our childhood self, many times the thing that has drawn us there is a need for healing something. So it's like a wound, let's say, or a sorrow from the past. But it is not to stay in the wound or the sorrow. It's to give it a voice and allow it to evolve to become the magical child, the child full of joy, the child full of light. That's how we came into the world. We did not come in with, it was living life that kind of knocked us around a little bit, and going back and giving voice to that. So to me, it would make perfect sense that it would be time for Sötnosen to have a new face and come into her because of all of the healing that you have done over the years and all of the joy that she has brought into the world. And now stepping in even more to the wholeness, the fullness of the child. Yeah, I look forward to seeing all the evolution there. Yeah.
Yeah, just like you said, she shows the healing. What happens to a person when you allow yourself to be loved by God?
Yes.
In the beginning, she was a baby.
Mm-hmm.
She has eyes and she had a mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And it took years because before she had ears.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's like the love also gives a person more personality
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and more details.
Yeah.
Eyebrows, eyelids, um, lips, whatever it is, so, and I know that if I know that I was raised with a father who was an alcoholic, and my parents divorced when I was 6. But that desire of, I wanted a father's love because I didn't have a father's love. That has paved the way to God and to that deep connection. And that's why the inner child has been able to transform into Sötnosen, to something more than me, to a little girl that is both me and God.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to see also the difference between Sötnosen, the inner child, and Madame Oulala, the woman in Christ. Sötnosen, I always draw like from an empty space. I never know, almost never know what will appear.
Mm-hmm.
With Madame Oulala, it's the opposite. It's like I have this sense of something.
Uh-huh.
And I ask myself, how am I going to put this on paper?
Mm-hmm.
And I do as I did when I was a child. I look up photos on internet. Oh, and then I see her. Oh, that's her. The gesture is her. The clothes are her. That's what I'm looking for.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting.
That is.
Yeah, and I asked myself, how come? Because that's how we evolve as humans, both by listening to ourselves, the deep, deep, deep innocent heart, and also by listening to others, looking at other people,
Mm-hmm.
copying what's good, learn
Yes.
from them. So she shows that part of me, that I I look at other people and try to copy what I think is good. This is good for me. That could be practice of something. I trained with someone called Justin Augustin. I found him on YouTube. I love his, gentle, kind approach to fitness. It suits me perfect. So I learned from him.
Mm-hmm.
So Madame Oulala, she portrays that sometimes you have to look at someone else who has done that journey, walked that path, and learn from her or him. So,
Mm-hmm.
so it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And to once again show that the unexpected moments of how art, creativity is going to come through, that it's like by the non-attachment, then you allow the character to show you okay, this one wants some research done. This one wants you to just show up and see what comes through. It's like there's such a freedom in the creation and an allowing, which to me is how spirit can also speak through us with that non-attachment. Well, as usual, time has just gone very quickly in this conversation for me. Thank you to the listeners for being here and, to yeah, give yourself permission to play a little bit with illustrations, play a little bit with the yeah, I talked about how for years I carried like a little sketchbook with me when I've traveled. Like I'm talking really little. Um, and just was too intimidated to pick up a pencil and do it. And now I'm just playing with it, giving myself permission to have the little stick figures, but to see what colors want to come through me and to use it as a tool. So I encourage anyone who considers himself not an artist to play with it as a medium and see what even draw with your non-dominant hand. see what comes through. If you're right-handed, use your left hand. See how that speaks to you also, to just go through the motion. So any other words as we're closing? Anything else that you want to share?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons that I have learned from illustrating, and I have been illustrating now since 2006, 7, so
Mhm.
is that I'm not attached to the outcome,
Mhm. Mhm.
nor the process.
Mhm.
Like I said, with Sötnosen, it just comes from this empty space. And with Madame Oulala, it's like I have an image in my head and I'm looking for it. It's almost like when, I don't know what it's called in English, in Swedish it's called kroki technique. You know, when you have a human body, a naked woman or man, and you
Mhm.
learning, how
Uh-huh.
to copy the human body. That's
Yeah.
what I do with her. So I'm not attached to the process. It doesn't have to look in a specific way. Just because Sötnosen is drawn in one way, that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that I have to draw everything that way.
Right. Right.
Nor am I attached to the result, because if you look at the first images of Sötnosen, yeah, I thought she was cute back then.
Mhm.
But she has developed.
Mhm.
My skills
Yeah.
has, developed because I practiced almost every day.
Mhm. Yeah.
Not just because I have to practice, but because I want to spend time with my little girl,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
woman inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's a
like being with my
relationship.
children and being with myself and being with God. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a relationship. If
Yeah.
I'm not with her, I can't see the development.
Mhm.
So you have to be present,
Right.
abandoned.
Yeah.
So those three things I think it's important.
Mhm.
Don't be attached to the outcome, not nor the process of creating, and not how the result look like. If it's a good drawing or a bad drawing.
Yeah.
Don't It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Allow God to use you.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
I love that. Thank you. And thank you to the listeners. And just to let you know that the next gift that we're going to talk about is home. And that will be in the next episode. So thanks once again, Marie, for the conversation and just allowing the flow between us and to bring first to each bring our own perspectives and ideas to it. So thank you.
Thank you. We are mirroring each other, even in our.
I know. We were talking about how we do not plan our clothes in advance, but today we're both sleeveless. That's what we just decided to come with. So here we are.
And in the last episodes, we both have jeans jackets. So
Yes, that's right. That's right. It was just like, oh, okay. Whatever I'm drawn to wear, I know that you are a mirror of it in some way. So I just follow the impulse. All right. So thanks, everyone.
thank you.
All right. Bye-bye now.